Welcome, everyone. This is Michael Dotterer, and I'm on the dot. And I'm so excited. We have a great show for you this afternoon. It's afternoon here on the East Coast. It's morning, so we have a great show for you this morning on the West Coast. And I haven't been on the dot for a while, and just want to say a few things. I like to wish happy birthdays to my friends out there. And I just when I go to my birthday list here, let me just see. I've got some birthdays today. Tyler Gaffney. It was Tyler Gaffney's birthday yesterday. Tyler, happy birthday yesterday. Tyler is one of the great athletes in Stanford history. He played baseball and football and has a couple Super Bowl rings. And happy belated birthday to Tyler. But today, let's see here. Happy birthday to Tracy Zappia Dooley, who's in Las Vegas. Happy birthday, Tracy. And happy birthday to Ruby Stone, who's in Pittsburgh. Happy birthday, Ruby. And let's see else. Oh, happy birthday to Dana Davini. Dana's down in Mississippi. Happy birthday, Dana. And happy birthday to Coach Rawlinson. If you don't know who Bruce Rawlinson is, he's the head football coach at Mater Dei High School in Orange County, Southern California, one of the great high school coaches in the United States, American football. He was my running back coach at Mater Dei back in 1977. So happy birthday, Coach Rawlinson. And happy birthday to one of the great Oakland Raiders of all time, John Vella, who was on that team. He blocked for Kenny Stabler. It's John's birthday today. Happy birthday, John, a fellow Raider. So happy birthday, John Vella. So with that, this portion of On the Dot is being brought to you by Euphoria Science. And I am so excited. I'm taking these Happy Tides and these Biomime, or I think that's how you pronounce it. And this is a Happy Humol. And I'm on a 90-day program to get my gut. If you Google or DuckDuckGo leaky gut, many of the ailments that all of us suffer from during our lifetime start with the gut. And if you learn about leaky gut, probably half the population has some form of leaky gut. If you can stop that, a lot of the ailments that you have can I believe, you can get rid of. I mean, you can solve the human body's amazing when you address the leaky gut issues. And then I also want to thank Numi, and Numi is glutathione. And when people look at me, they say, "Gosh, Dot, you look fantastic. What are you doing?" Well, I spray the glutathione on my face just like that, and it's amazing. Glutathione, Numi, and they have the Numi Swish, which is glutathione. And what I do is I take a little capful like this and swish it around my mouth for 30 seconds. I cut it short this time. It's amazing. My energy. So people, when they look, they say, "Dot, how old are you?" And I say, 61. They say, "Gosh, you don't look 61. You don't have the energy of someone that's 61. What are you doing?" Numi and Euphoria Science. So thank you to Liliana Lopez-Bergy, who's out there in California, and Eric Yamaguchi. Both of them shared these two amazing companies with me, and I want to thank them. And the final person I want to thank is Virginia and Tom Yerrick and Pierre Bourgeon for introducing Club Nirvana. Club Nirvana is in California and Arizona and soon to be in Nevada and hopefully out here on the East Coast soon. They're involved in the cannabis industry, which is an amazing growth industry. We're finding out that cannabis can help people with their medicinal challenges. So something I didn't know about 3 or 4 years ago. I had no interest, and I've since learned that cannabis is a great alternative to some of the pharma that's out there, and I'd highly recommend you to look into it. So with that, I have an amazing woman on here today. She is a fellow Stanford graduate, and she grew up in a place near where I was born, North Dakota. And where I grew up was called Saskatchewan. So she grew up near Saskatchewan, up in the North Dakota, and she was a phenomenal athlete. She was in the track and field, as you can see. This is the famous Angel Field where she became a 9-time All-American, shot put and discus. And in my opinion, she needs to be in the Hall of Fame, the Stanford Hall of Fame. We need to get the committee because what she did was amazing. And then after she's taken her knowledge of kinesiology and understanding the human body, and she's really done some fabulous things and she's going to talk about what she's done, where she is today, and where she's going and where her organization's going, which is just so exciting because every time I read about her, I just get uplifted. So, and then I want to thank her brother, Mr. Purpur, who her brother, he is one of my best friends at Stanford, and he is one of the, I would say, the longest serving, Ray Purpur, longest serving athletic administrators in Stanford history. And Ray's done an amazing job at Stanford. And they are related. They have athletic genes. They are related to a famous, I believe, 2 brothers who are famous hockey players, ice hockey. So hopefully she'll mention her great uncle, or she can talk about it. But Patty, I call her Patty Purpur, and her husband is De Vries, which is Dutch. So Patty, I apologize if I've left anything out. But what I love about On the Dot is I'm going to not say anything. And the first question I'm going to ask you is, please share with our audience tell us about, where you came from, North Dakota, and how did you get to Palo Alto and Stanford University?
Well, thank you for having me, Michael. This is an honor to be part of your show and to talk about these things. Grew up in North Dakota, loved North Dakota, being outside the vast open land, and was really blessed by having an opportunity to train from the time I was 12. I had been running cross country, and the boys coach from the high school saw me and asked if I'd be willing to throw the shot put and discus. I didn't even know what a shot and discus were back then, but I agreed. And this was in a time, this would have been about 1978, where girls were not encouraged to lift weights. And I had to petition the school to start lifting weights at 12 because they told me, it would change your growth, it would harm you, all these things. And so we petitioned the school back in 1977, actually, it would have been, to allow me to lift weights. And we finally were able to get permission. And I started training at the age of 12. And I trained with the guys. I was, for many years, the only girl that trained with this particular coach. And so I learned to lift with the guys. I learned to stay strong with the guys. I learned how to really navigate a world that was, what we'd call male dominated at this point. But I never felt really different than the boys. I kept up with them. I did my training, and it paid off. In 1985, I was offered a full athletic scholarship to Stanford. And from that point on, I really have worked to find really the good in the world and the good in life, to be able to step above some of the negative things that are happening in our world. And so for right now, I'm in a place where I get to do that even in a bigger sense. So I started my company right after I graduated from Stanford. I got married 2 weeks after graduation. I had 2 children within 2 years of graduating. And so I became a full-time mom and trying to figure out what to do with my life, transitioning from being an athlete where I was training 5 hours a day to now being a stay-at-home mom with 2 small children. So I started doing the personal fitness training. I started working with some great companies here in the Bay Area. Some of my clients included Google, Yahoo, Safeway, KLA, Tencor, and Cisco Systems back in the day. So I was able to just really use my passion for health and well-being in a really fun way. And that's what brought me to starting my first company, I sold that company in 2009 to a company that was eventually bought out by Optum, and took some time off, wrote a little book, and then started volunteering back at the farm at Stanford. And that small little volunteer role, which was as the director of the Stanford Health Promotion Network, really blossomed and gave me all these great opportunities over the 10 years that I was at Stanford. In the fall of last year, I decided I had really come to the end of where I felt that I was doing my best work at Stanford. I had been a director for many years, and the director of strategy, outreach, and innovation for our well-being program. And when the shift on many of the aspects of the work we were doing shifted to return to work and some other, really important agenda items, I found that the work that I really wanted to do and being passionate about was no longer a priority. So that's when my husband and I decided to speed up our retirement plans of building an event center out here in California. And we're now offering corporate events. We're doing some weddings, but my passion is really helping people to really rise above a lot of the, for lack of a technical term, the ickiness that is happening with the world. Between social media and the comparison that we always do to others, the constant noise that we get, this infiltration of noise and energy and negativity and comparison, that my passion has really been over the last 2 years is to help people get back to their authentic self, help them get out in nature, help them benefit from what nature does to you, in terms of this great healing properties of being in nature. And I've found that every time I get overwhelmed with media or overwhelmed with just that noise that is happening on an ongoing basis and my to-do list and all of these things I want to accomplish, that when I go outside, spend some time in nature, dig in the dirt with my hands, build some trails, that I'm refreshed and I'm able to think more clearly, be creative, and like myself in a way that is really difficult to do when you listen to the world. And so I'm on a path of helping people find their authentic nature, get back to who they are, to spend some time in nature, to get off of our phones, to make decisions about where we want to go and the person we want to become by going inside of ourselves through meditation, through mindfulness, through being in the forest, through understanding what our strengths are and leading in the light instead of leading in fear and darkness. And I'm seeing leaders fearful of what's happening in the world, fearful for their futures, and leaders who lead in fear struggle and their teams struggle. And so my mission is to really help leaders get back to leading in the light, to be able to uplift their teams, to help support them, because every team member is somebody's child. Every team member wants to be valued and be seen for their authentic being. So I talk a lot about psychological safety. I talk a lot about strengths. I talk about whether it's the Gallup Strengths Finder, which I love and I teach classes on and do coaching on, or even the VIA Character Strengths, which talks about our inherent core values and how we show up in the world, our character values. So that's really the mission I'm on, is to not only help myself, because I've found that this really has been impactful in my life over the last 2 years. COVID gave me the gift of a lifetime. I had less 2 hours of a commute each week, and I was able to spend that time in the forest, spend that time in my inner world, really finding my authentic being.
Wow. I'm thinking of Henry David Thoreau, who wrote the book on Walden Pond. And it sounds to me like that's the last 2 years, you've been writing this book that has become, and I'm going to flash it right down here at the bottom. I love the URL that you've come up with, livingwellusa.com. So can people go to that site and learn more about your amazing work?
Yes, absolutely. Keep in mind that website, I did on my own. So if you have some feedback on it, I'm always happy for feedback. But Living Well USA is our new organization's name. We do have an event center here in Northern California. It's just 20 minutes from the San Jose airport. And my favorite day is to bring a team up here, take a look at our strengths, again, the Gallup strengths and the character strengths, let people spend time off their phones, off their computers, digging in the dirt, building things out in nature, whether it's a small item with maybe a card that we get creative with, or even building these, Andy Goldworthy type of stick structures out on the property. We have 4.5 acres that I get to play in, and I call it my playground. And tending to it, nurturing it, I've found to be this just most exhilarating time. And especially when I'm struggling with any idea, any concept, or any relationship, when I go outside and center myself in nature, everything seems to slow down, come together, and I'm able to center myself in this brand new way. And I really love that. And I'm reminded that, my family history, if I look back at my family history, you mentioned my athletic roots. And certainly my great uncle was Patty Purpur, and he played for the Blackhawks. He was in the Guinness Book of World Records for a time. He had scored 4 goals in 25 seconds. And then his brother, also my great uncle, played on the 1956 Olympic team, where he received a silver medal. So I definitely have those athletic backgrounds. And what I've come to really appreciate more and more is the history of my grandfather. So the 2 athletes had a brother, my grandfather, named Al Purpur. And Al Purpur worked at the University of North Dakota, and he was the caretaker for all the sports facilities. We have pictures of him with a what we call the original Zamboni, which were 2 steel metal, like oil cans, those huge oil cans. And there were 2 stacked on each other, and just a blade at the bottom that let the water out. And we have a picture of him. It's actually at the University of North Dakota in their hockey building, of Grandpa Al using what I call that first Zamboni, making the ice. He used to paint the lines on the ice, paint the lines on the football fields, groom the football fields, and just was the caretaker of the UND legacy of sports. And when I connected with that after spending these 2 years out on the land, and when I was out on the land, it wasn't just, walking on the land. It was building stairs, building trails down to an area I had never experienced before. It wasn't walkable because of this invasive weed called Scotch broom or French broom. And so I spent a lot of that 2 years clearing that property. And the way I looked at clearing that property is every weed I pulled was a negative thought that I had held on to over my lifetime. And so as I cleared the weeds of the land, I cleared the weeds of these thoughts that I had come to believe. And there's a lot of those thoughts, and all of us have them, where maybe we were a child and somebody told us you can't sing, or in my case, I was told I shouldn't smile because I had horse teeth. And we come to believe these things that other people may say in the heat of the moment or just out of frustration. And one of my favorite books is The 4 Agreements that talks about just this, is what are the belief systems we have? And so I spent those 2 years listening to The 4 Agreements over again, listening to a great book by Shakti Gawain called Living in the Light. And so as I was pulling those weeds, I was opening the land to the sunshine, because these weeds weren't allowing native plants to grow. And so as I built over 350 stairs and paths all around the property, I kept thinking about pulling those weeds, letting go of those weeds so that the land could again see the light. And the native plants that have sprung up cover this land now. And it's to the point where I'm a little overwhelmed by the weeds. So if anyone wants to spend time in nature, I've got weed pulling to do. And so it's just this beautiful, this space that I want to share with others, because I know for myself, my personal growth, I'm in a very different place than I was 2 years ago. I see the world in a different place. And I also see the suffering that so many people are having because they've lost touch with themselves. There's this great quote that I will read that has really inspired me as well. It's by Emily McDowell. Finding yourself is not really how it works. You aren't a $10 bill in last year's coat pocket. You're also not lost. Your true self is right there, buried under cultural conditioning, other people's opinions, and inaccurate conclusions we drew as a child. These conclusions have become our beliefs about who we are. Finding yourself is actually returning to yourself, an unlearning, an excavation, a remembering of who you were before the world got its hands on you. And that has been just a quote that I go back to, because as I'm excavating the land and bringing it back to its true nature, I've done the same thing with myself.
That's beautiful, Patty. I have to say that I've had the same, I guess, epiphany or revelation. You know, I'm a different person today than I was a few years ago, and it relates to just what you were saying. You know, the famous Greek aphorism, "Know thyself."
Mm-hmm.
And you may know this. It's a survey called Myers-Briggs,
Yep.
and I'm an ENFP, which, you know, I have friends of mine that say, oh, you know, people that studied psychology, oh, that you can't label people. It's more complicated than that. Well, it's really helped me understand that I get energy from people. I didn't, you know, I never, you know, 4, 5, 6 years ago, I really didn't know that. You know, I mean, people would say, oh, you mean you, come on. I never was introspective. The second one is I'm a dreamer, big picture dreamer. And I remember how my mother used to say, Mike, that's crazy. You know, 30 years ago, I used to, you know, sell these cell phones, and I would say, hey, everyone's going to have a phone. And people would say, oh, no, come on. I got a house phone. Well, now almost everyone in the world has a cell phone. So I'm a dreamer. And then I start my decision-making with my heart versus analytical, which doesn't have anything to do with compassion or empathy. It's just, that's the way I start my decision-making. And then I'm a go with the flow, as you found out today, because I was like, oh, Patty, we're supposed to get on at 9. I forgot, blah, blah, blah. And thank you so much for flexibility. That, just knowing that about myself has really helped me. And then I'm able to also discover what, for example, you, Patty, do you know what your Myers-Briggs typology is?
I'm not remembering it right off the bat, but I do know that I've discovered, like you, that I'm actually an introvert. And so I love being around people. I love teaching these classes. I love sharing this wisdom I'm collecting. And I know I need that time in nature to recharge, re-energize, and continue to learn as I go inward and spend that time in nature. So learning a lot about ourselves, I think, is really important, because we spend so much time trying to be somebody that somebody else wants us to be. And we forget then who we are. And the moment we can let go of other people's opinions and start living our own lives, it's world changing. And what I started to say about my grandfather being a caretaker of the land of the University of North Dakota, you know, I fought this for a little while, that, you know, I don't want to be seen as just this gardener or this, you know, which I love the whole piece about gardening, but I had this struggle with it. It's like, but I'm a director at Stanford, and what does that look like if I just stay home and I garden? And yet it's so much bigger than that. It's this responsibility to love our planet and care for the land and make sure that we honor it as we honor ourselves. And so I've come to terms that being a caretaker of this land may be the most important mission and purpose that I have. Our land is connected to a piece of property next door that I would love to purchase for no other reason than to protect it from more development. It is the start of Bean Creek, and the owners that currently have it that want to develop it have dumped so much stuff down there. They've dumped asphalt. They've dumped the RV that was blown up there. I think there was a meth lab or something up there. They've dumped a car down into the ravine. And I want more than anything to start protecting this piece of land that I am so fortunate to be on. And so I stepped away from what other people might think. If I quit my job as being a director and I start focusing on this purpose of caring for this land. Now, I do more than that. I do some executive coaching to help people center themselves to get back to their authentic being. I certainly teach some classes, and I do some of those more intellectual things. But I really am starting to see that my purpose is to bring myself and others back in touch with nature, back in touch with their authentic being. And then as we do that, I hope that our earth can start to recover from the damage we have done. You can't immerse yourself in nature and you can't see what's happening while you're out in the forest and not care. Because once we fall in love with that forest, we want to take care of this planet and we will make hopefully better decisions.
Beautiful. I love your vision. And again, everyone, to learn more about Patty's amazing vision, you can click the link below, or actually you can go to the link below, which is livingwellusa.com. And you know, Patty, this is interesting about you putting USA, which, you know, we have so many problems here in this country with mental illness, which is probably, I think, the biggest problem we have, which leads to homelessness, poverty, malnutrition. And I just think what you're doing, getting leaders to focus on, you know, how they can make a difference. And I'm here in upstate New York. What about, I would love to buy a 4-acre parcel here and love to replicate what you're doing there in California. We could do it here. Do you have plans for that kind of expansion?
I don't, but certainly would love to encourage anyone who's willing to take the dive. It is, you know, again, it's the biggest gift I got out of COVID that, you know, about 2 acres of our property, I'd never really spent any time on because it was steep and to most people it would be considered unusable. And instead I've been able to spend this time clearing it, maintaining it, trying to keep the Scotch boomer away, although I think it's winning the battle in some of the areas. And I've created these meditation spots on areas that I feel we all could focus on. The one with the pond, which I've had great wildlife come. I found the spring, and that's part of why it's called Living Well. Certainly I want to live well. I want to help other people live their best lives and live well. But part of the reason we called it this was that in 2020, when I was out walking, and I just had back surgery, my dad had died in 2019, COVID struck, we got sent home. I didn't get rehab on my back. So I spent the time out in the forest walking, and my healing was amazing. The amount of time it took me to heal. Now, I will also say that you mentioned before the show really started is about the cannabis. And I started taking CBD. I started walking on the property. My healing took place so quickly that I was able to start this whole cultivation property on the land. And part of that was that I found what is a spring, it's called a spring lot on our property that I sort of knew was there, but I didn't know what it was for. And it had a pipe coming out with a drip. And so when I discovered the drip, I put a cup underneath it. And then a few days later, the cup was full, so I put a bowl underneath it. And a little bit later, I put a tarp underneath it to see, well, could I fill up a little spring or a little pond here that the wildlife could use? It was 2 years ago when those fires hit, and the wildlife I was worried about because they were being drawn out of the Santa Cruz Mountains. And I knew that water was going to be an issue. And so I eventually created this pond that it's really only about 3 feet across, 3 feet deep, maybe 2 feet deep. And I've captured mountain lions down there, deer, bobcats, quails. I was down there one day meditating, and an owl in broad daylight came to visit me. So I feel in so many ways that this has been an inspired project. The land is just responding with this most amazing wildflowers and gifts. And part of, I believe, mental illness is losing touch with nature. losing touch again with our authentic being, that we're in this constant state on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on other social media platforms, continually comparing ourselves to other people. And I'm guilty of it. I've got friends that are out on the speaking circuit, they're writing books, they're doing all these things. And I start feeling like I'm not enough. I'm not enough. I'm not doing that. Why haven't I done that? Why didn't I do that during COVID? And that is such a devastating place to be, that even someone that I know better, it got me down for a day or two, that comparison. And so when that happens, I've learned to get back out in nature, to back into my centering, to realize what it is that I love and am passionate about, so that I can be the best gift to the world that I can be.
Beautiful. You know, when you're mentioning comparing oneself with other people, are you familiar with the famous poem Desiderata?
I'm not, but I have a feeling it might be my new favorite.
Oh, I think so. Would you like me to? It's a short poem. Would you like me to read it to you?
Sure.
Okay. Let's hear it. It starts with, "Go placidly amid the noise and haste, and remember what peace there may be in silence. As far as possible, without surrender, be on good terms with all persons. Speak your truth quietly and clearly, and listen to others, even the dull and the ignorant. They too have their story. Avoid loud and aggressive persons. They are vexations to the spirit. If you compare yourself with others, you may become vain or bitter, for always there will be greater and lesser persons than yourself. Enjoy your achievements as well as your plans. Keep interested in your own career, however humble. It is a real possession in the changing fortunes of time. Exercise caution in your business affairs, for the world is full of trickery, but let this not blind you to what virtue there is. Many persons strive for high ideals, and everywhere life is full of heroism. Be yourself, especially do not feign affection. Neither be cynical about love, for in the face of all aridity and disenchantment, it is as perennial as the grass. Take kindly the counsel of the years, gracefully surrendering the things of youth. Nurture strength of spirit to shield you in sudden misfortune, but do not distress yourself with dark imaginings. Many fears are born of fatigue and loneliness. Beyond a wholesome discipline, be gentle with yourself. You are a child of the universe, no less than the trees and the stars. You have a right to be here. And whether it is not clear to you, no doubt the universe is unfolding as it should. Therefore, be at peace with God, whatever you conceive him or her to be, and whatever your labors and aspirations. In the noisy confusion of life, keep peace in your soul. With all its sham, drudgery, and broken dreams, it is still a beautiful world. Be cheerful, strive to be happy." And that is what you've just said today, Patty. You could have written that poem.
It's a beautiful poem. It's really a lovely poem. The only thing I would add to it, and I love it, I would love to live by that, is there's one place where it said there are going to be people, I don't remember how, but there was that comparison, people doing better than you or people doing less than you. And I like the word that vain or on the other side of it, more depressed or bitter. And what I would say is that each of us have this beautiful spark in us. That's what makes us alive. That makes us who we are. And I am no better than anyone, and no one else is better than me. We are all in this world together to find our spark, to find our purpose, to live a life that uplifts others. And the moment we can realize that all of us have that spark, every human being has it and has that uniqueness about it, then the comparison can maybe stop and we can start being happy for other people's success. I believe that the more successful we have, those around us will be uplifted as well. And when we can be happy for other people, when we can rise together, it is such a powerful place to be. Instead of being what I would call below the line. And there's a great video from conscious.is, and it's a Canadian company. And the video of where are you is one of my favorites. And it talks about being above the line in a place of creativity and love, or being below the line in a place of fear and really loneliness, because we go into that deep, dark place. And so my goal is to help those around me rise, and that will help me rise with them and make the world just a little bit better place.
You're doing it, because I'm just glowing what you say, and it is true that the comparing yourself with others, and I think the antithesis of jealousy is, as you said, being happy for others. There's a word out there that I became familiar with a few years ago called compersion, which is being happy for other people's success if they're happy. And I think, whatever's happening, because we could get into some of the struggles that are going on around the world. We want people to be happy. We have to have could you talk a little bit about the concept of abundance versus scarcity?
Yes, absolutely. Even that video talks about it. Scarcity is when we're afraid. Then we start comparing, we start finding everything that's wrong in our lives. And one of the most important things to remember is that whatever we focus on gets better if we focus our positive attention on it. So for instance, when I started looking at this land, again, I didn't even know that part of the land really had any potential. I just thought it was a place for the deer to stay out of our yard so they didn't eat all of our plants. And when I started to discover that I have everything I could ever need right here on this piece of property, that I have my walking trails, that I don't need to go to the gym. I have this place of peacefulness and tranquility that when I go inside myself, when I go down to this area on the land that I've now called the Cauldron of Transformation, that's the centerpiece down the hillside. We've got a place of serenity. We've got this place of transformation. We've got an area for forgiveness for ourselves and others. There's a place to reflect on perspective. There's a place that is, strength, and I get strength from going to that place. This place is just such a magical piece of land. And we've had groups here blessing the land who have these great activities of just really going into that place of nature and feeling the abundance. When we're thankful for what we have, our abundance comes. When we're thankful for what little we have or as much as we have, then we feel that gratitude, and that gratitude lifts us higher. The struggle is that when we get into this material loop, we think that the next good car, great car, the next phone, or the next laptop, or the next outfit, or the next pair of shoes is going to make us happy. And when we have that striving for materialism, there will never be enough. Once we go into that place of lack and we lose track of the little things that bring us joy, then our focus goes on to accumulating. And when we're accumulating, there's never going to be enough. Another dollar, another project, another speaking engagement, another pair of shoes, another whatever it is, some kind of accolade. And instead, when we slow down and we show deep appreciation for the people in our lives, the resources that we have, then the upward spiral begins, because that feeling of gratitude that we have will permeate everything that we do. And the abundance starts coming because people want to be around those who are grateful, that show gratitude. When I was a leader at Stanford and my wellness team was doing phenomenal projects, it was one of gratitude and it was one of possibility. And when we can start that upward spiral, starting with gratitude for what we have and where we are, then we can start moving to where we want to be. And so as we focus on things, if we're focusing on our neighbor and their faults, or we're focusing on a coworker, or we're focusing on what we're lacking, all of our attention goes to that lack, and we find more lack because that's what we're looking for. When we start to see the beautiful things in our lives, in everyday living, then that helps us be just thankful and grateful and kind to each other. And that upward spiral begins. And it's beautiful how that works. I teach a class. It's called an 8-week Rise class. I've been teaching it for just for the last 3 weeks for a university in the Midwest. I got the most beautiful letter today from someone because of the exercises we do. We do what's called 3 good things. We're doing some values practice. We're looking at our strengths. And the email I received this morning made everything I do worthwhile because it was so beautiful and life-changing for someone who was in a below the line state of fear and anxiety, to help bring them back up, to start over and focusing on what it is we do want, not focusing on what we don't want.
Wow. I'm telling you, this 45 minutes, right now we're at 40 minutes. This is something that this recording, because it's being recorded live all over the internet, but this recording is, you can't put a price tag. I mean, this is amazing what you're saying. So I encourage everyone, if you're listening or you hear about this, forward this out, because what Patty is sharing with us is transformational. It's life-changing. Your message, the way you're coaching, how you can shift your thinking, having an attitude of gratitude. Patty, you're amazing. And so with that, I apologize for talking too much, because On the Dot is really about you. So what we do on the dot is you get the last word, and you can talk as long as you want, but it's your show, and I'm going to go off and put myself on mute. And again, we do have this conflict that's going on in the Ukraine. My great-grandfather fled that part of the world and moved to Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, because he was from Kiev, born in Kiev. And, Patty, there might be someone from the Ukraine that's listening right now. So with that, we pray for peace. I do believe that, we have enough good people on this planet that know that fighting each other is not going to accomplish what we need to do to save our planet. So with that, Patty, the floor is yours. And thank you so much for this amazing talk and for coming on the dot. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Michael, for the opportunity. I will add my care and my love for the people of Ukraine. As you mentioned, Michael, my maiden name is Purpur, and my family, that Purpur family, came from an area I think it's 90 miles south of Lviv in the Ukraine. And so I do have a heart for the people there. My whole family came over from what is now the Ukraine back in the early 1900s. And I have such a deep place and deep love for those people. I want to end with just reminding our listeners, because we know that just this loneliness has creeped into our existence, this depression, this just really lethargy, that we get down, our energy goes down when we don't have what we need, and that support surrounding us. A lot of that can transform when we start thinking very differently about ourselves, start caring for ourselves in the deepest way possible, to show your body love. We're in this place where I believe it's, the commercialism of the world has taught us that nothing about ourselves is good enough. We need more, fashion. We need less body weight. We need more hair. We've been convinced we need all of these things in order to be happy. And the reality is, if we can stop for a moment and start loving ourselves right where we are, we can start changing the world. And that is my hope, is that we can start with loving ourselves instead of listening to the judgments of the outside world, that we become the person we want to be, filled with love and light, and that we can support others to do the same. The more we criticize ourselves, the more harsh we are to ourselves, the more we're going to continue to criticize other people as well. And so if we can stop the judgment with ourselves, be kind to ourselves, learn about our authentic nature, you are enough. And I can't say that strongly enough. wherever you are, there may be things you want to change in your life. There may be things that you want to improve in your life. And if you can start today with the appreciation wherever you are, I promise you, your life will be more fulfilling as you start looking for gratitude in every little thing in your life. The joy will come back. And that is my hope. I really appreciate being with you today, Michael, and with anyone who's listening. I would love to hear from anyone who might be listening, that even if you're having a hard time, feel free to email me. My email is patty@livingwellusa.com. And again, thank you for listening to this. And Michael, thank you for having me.